You're listening to Pretty Much Pop, a culture podcast. We'd like to break the fourth wall, but we'd have to build one first. Today we're discussing the Deadpool film franchise and character in light of the new Deadpool and Wolverine film, which officially marks the end of the 20th Century Fox Marvel franchise since it was acquired by Disney. I'm Mark Linsenmeyer, the Mark with a mouth.
I'm Al Baker, still pretty sore about that Green Lantern movie.
I'm Sarah Lynn Bruck, but most people know me as Lang and Litpool.
It's a deep cut. My name is Lawrence Ware, and I may sound like Lawrence, I may look like Lawrence, but I'm actually from an alternate dimension.
And so we arrive. We had an extra week to work on this. I didn't take advantage of that. I have read a few reviews. It seems like people tend to like this movie. I did see something, I couldn't find the reference this morning, that was saying, oh, well, this is the Disney-fied version, and what made the original two Deadpool movies so great, their subversive quality was undercut. I don't know. I didn't get that feeling when I was watching it at all. What do y'all think of this one and the series as a whole, which I enjoy? I'll get on the record.
Well, my journey with the latest Deadpool movie was originally we were going to record this a week ago, and at the time I had just got back from a 4-day long, really punishing road trip. And the last thing in the world that I wanted to do was to go and watch a movie in the cinema. But because of my irrepressible work ethic, I dragged myself over there.
Love your dedication.
The movie made it absolutely worth it for me. I was so delightfully surprised at how much I enjoyed Deadpool versus Wolverine. And I was a big fan of the original Deadpool movie when it came out. And I think the reason why the first Deadpool movie and the latest one were both, I think, so successful have a lot to do with one another. The second Deadpool movie I thought was fine. Deadpool, the character, I've always enjoyed his place in the Marvel universe, but this latest movie was an absolute riot, and I was so happy that I went to see it even when I really didn't want to. It's been a while, I think, since a movie has cheered me up so much.
Wonderful.
Aw. Like so many of these Marvel movies, my journey to Deadpool was very short. I watched all 3 of those movies in rapid succession because I'd never seen one of them before.
Oh, my.
I also had never seen Logan, so I had my work cut out for me.
Wow.
But I have to say, I really enjoyed them. I thought they were, as Mark had said, they're irreverent. I thought they were really funny. My daughter is probably a little bit more knowledgeable about this character and that whole universe than I am. She was a help. She went to the movie with me and my husband. But I have to say, I had a lot of fun. I was kind of going into it thinking, oh, am I just going to be irritated, at this guy, at this character? And yes, he is a little bit irritating, but he won me over in the end. He absolutely won me over.
Well, I have a long and storied history not storied, nobody has written about it, but I have a long history with Deadpool and Logan. I mean, I am a X-Men fan all the way to the 90s. That's when I started reading the comic books. And in the 90s, I read what I could. And then around in the 2000s, I got access to reading the older stuff. So I have a long history with the X-Men. Honestly, Wolverine's not even my favorite X-Men. He's kind of a short, mean guy. My favorite X-Men is probably Gambit or I don't know, but it's not Wolverine. No, Bishop. Bishop's my favorite X-Men. Anyway.
And we're going to spoil the crap out of this. So were you, by having the Gambit from the movie that was never made appear as a cameo in this, you were the target audience?
That was me. It was. Okay, so we're spoiling now. We're in spoiler territory. All right, so
sure.
The Elektra, that was for me. I saw that in the movie theaters. It was not good, but it was great to me at the time. Blade, I saw that in the movie theaters, part 1 and part 2. I did not watch part 3 at all. I heard it was terrible, so I didn't watch it. But those first 2 Blade movies, I saw those in the movie theaters. So I'm the target audience for that. And then the Fantastic Four movies, way back in the day with Jessica Alba and Chris Evans. So I'm the target audience for this film, right? So when I saw Channing Tatum walk on the screen as Gambit with that terrible Cajun accent, I was like, okay, this is what I've been waiting for. This is what I've been looking for. This is what I wanted. So I'm the target audience for it. It hit me on all the proper levels. I'm not going to lie to you guys, man. I laughed. I cried in moments. We can talk about the moments when I cried because I'm a big baby. My family makes fun of me because I hate emotional stuff, but I cry all the time. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, I'm working through this in counseling. Anyway, but nevertheless, so I really, really enjoyed the film. Is it a good film? We can talk about that. I do not know. I genuinely don't know. I don't know if it's a good film. But does it do what a Deadpool film is supposed to do? Yes. Is it exciting? Yes. Is the MCU back? Yeah, probably. Is it a good film? I genuinely don't know. Like, it was so much stuff going on, so many jokes being thrown at you per minute, you know, so many in-sync songs being sung. You know, it was all over the place. And so I don't know if it's good. It was very entertaining. I got a lot of those deep cuts about like Wolverine being crucified. That's a deep cut reference to a comic cover. And then the scene where Wolverine has like the Hulk there and you can see the Hulk's face in the claws. That's a callback to a comic cover. It's a very dense film. I deeply, deeply enjoyed it. I really enjoyed myself. I'm going to let Al tell me if it's a good film or not, because I don't know.
I think you really hit on something there, because while I was watching it, I thought that the movie was hilarious and made a few really important points satirically, which really needed making. The way Fox handled Marvel properties and Disney's latest run of the Marvel Cinematic Universe are both places where Hollywood has stumbled tremendously, and it felt really, really refreshing and important for Deadpool to directly be able to make fun. Like when Deadpool says at one point, he says to Wolverine, welcome to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. You're joining at a bit of a low point. And that was when...
At a bit of a low point. It was great. It was great.
That was when I knew this movie was going to be all the things that it needed to be. My favorite thing about Deadpool versus Wolverine is how mercilessly honest it is about how exhausted everybody is with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and about how they just haven't been able to do anything all that good in a while, and about the terrible way that Fox seems to have treated Marvel properties in its history. But I kind of was left with the same question as Lawrence at the end of, like, I know that I enjoyed this movie enormously, and I think it made a lot of very, if there can be such things as important jokes, made a lot of important jokes that were worth making. But I also came away from it feeling like I'd watched a piece of meta text with a bit of cursory film attached to it.
Definitely.
Yes, I will quote my brother-in-law, Brian, who appeared on our Dune podcast, saying that this actually takes place in our world, that it has, I was trying to wait, doesn't Logan happen in the future? Well, no, for the filmmakers, it's all in the past. So it is basically not a documentary exactly, but yes, I think metatext is the great way to put it, that it is about this thing. And I don't know. So maybe to start with, like, just from the beginning of Deadpool, from the character, which I didn't realize, I was just looking at the wiki page today, he was created as a Spider-Man ripoff. Like, it's not an accident that he looks like Spider-Man and has weapons. And it was because the writers, Rob Liefeld and Fabian Nicieza, I don't know how to pronounce his name. Anyway, wanted to create somebody that's easy to draw. You don't have to draw his facial expression, and that he can talk directly to the audience. He can give all these little quips all the time. He can give soliloquies. That was the point. And there's actually like a special font they use in the comic so that he can, actually address the audience. And I was really enamored from a young age, maybe reading Kurt Vonnegut's Breakfast of Champions, of anything that broke the fourth wall. That just like was the definition of smart, media to me. At some point, this is part of this sort of partially examined life ethic of the self-consciousness gets old. You sort of get sick of yourself, that this is a movie that is tired of superhero movies and acknowledging and reveling in the fact that we are kind of, so making a comment on itself. And, after a certain point, like, no, it's actually just breaking character. This trick is old, but I feel like this is the one, like, I don't want this to become a trend, but this is the one property I feel can and should do this.
It was so inside baseball. It was inside baseball from the Marvel perspective and also just from a Hollywood perspective. The commentary that they were making about Disney and about Fox, like, I thought, wow, I mean, they must have thought this movie was, and it is, going to be a blockbuster, because they got away with a lot of crap.
There's a lot of stuff in here. There is. Yeah. And then there's even jokes about the fact that Hugh Jackman is divorced.
Right.
Like, it's so many things going on in this film. I mean, because Sarah is right. It is commenting on Marvel. It's commenting on 20th Century Fox. It's commenting on the private lives of Hugh Jackman. If you were paying attention, it's commenting on the private life of Ryan Reynolds. Like, it's commenting on everything.
On the film
nothing's
industry
off balance.
itself,
Yeah.
you know?
It's talking about pegging. It's talking about the stuff, hopefully, that my mom won't be mad at me talk about pegging. Anyway, and it's commenting on the fact that what Kevin Feige will let them do and not let them do. Like, it's commenting on all these things. And it's fascinating and brilliant and irreverent and risky. And also, I'm not sure if it's good. But it's doing all these things very, very well. And I really enjoyed it.
Is that the question, though? Because I think, like, whether or not it's good doesn't matter because it's clearly effective. I think this is an effective movie. I think they did what they wanted to do with this movie.
Just to throw out that She-Hulk did a similar thing in its finale, and nobody's talking about that because overall the series was not that good.
That's true. And nobody watched it either.
We need to be clearer, I think, about what we mean by is it a good film? Because it's clearly a good thing. It's doing a lot of good things, but the place where I feel like it falls down, if it does, and it's an open question, I think, whether this is even a problem, because as Sarah Lynn said, it is clearly doing everything that it set out to do to an extremely high standard. There's just not a lot of plot there. There's not really a superhero movie. It's like a series of vignettes, each designed to tell a series of very, very funny and clever jokes.
Yeah.
At the expense of like superheroes generally and Hollywood and so on.
Like there were no stakes.
There's no stakes. And it kind of made the third act boring because they felt like they had to finish, not the entire third act, you're right, because there's the big fight and that's awesome. But the weird last scene where there's good jokes in it. Hugh Jackman gets his shirt off. Ryan Reynolds is impressed.
Thank God.
We
were all impressed.
Fun stuff. Yeah, we're all impressed. Finally, he got his shirt off.
I was impressed too. Like, that dude is cut. He's real.
Yeah.
How old is he? 75? God damn, that dude's cut.
He's in his 50s. He's in his 50s.
I know he's 50s.
And maybe in order to truly bat 1,000, the movie should have had like a good, engaging plot at the level of the film rather than lying entirely on that meta-narrative. But maybe all that means is the movie won't age all that well. But for now, for what it is now, it's really terrific. And maybe anything else would have just been distracting.
That's a good point, Al.
I don't know. Listen, okay, so maybe this is me being an X-Men nerd, but I thought that Cassandra Nova, played by Emma Corrin, was a wonderful character. She is the sibling of Professor X. She has amazing power set. I genuinely think we might see her again because she is a wonderful character, both in the comics. I thought she was really good in the film as well. I thought the actress was really good who played her. So I think that the central issue between her and X-Men and Logan, I thought that was really good. I thought that was well done. Now, the extra stuff around it is pretty much fan service. You know, Elektra, terrible movie. It was good to see her back. Gambit, they were clearly having fun with that. I thought Wesley Snipes was actually really good.
It was so good to see him in this movie.
It was good to see him. He was really good as it. So I thought and I enjoyed that the cameos, if we would even call them cameos, were not like 5 minutes. Like if you remember to Deadpool Part 2, you saw Brad Pitt for like, 30 seconds? And that's a cameo. Here, they have substantial roles in the film. They're actual characters in the film. They get to act. They have poignant moments. I really enjoyed that. So I'm not going to say that it was a bad film in that regard. I just don't know what it's going to add to the overall tapestry of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And honestly, I don't know if that's a fair question to ask. Maybe this should just be viewed as a one-off because the other Deadpool films didn't really add much to the X-Men universe. Not really. They were kind of side quests. So maybe I'm asking for it to do too much.
I want to pick on your comment on the Brad Pitt thing. That was not 30 seconds. That was a blink and you'll miss it cameo.
Absolutely.
That he played
absolutely
an invisible character that gets electrocuted, and it's only during the 4 seconds that he is visible and electrocuted that you can see. Wait a second. Was that Brad Pitt that they got to do that one?
I missed that completely.
Yeah.
What movie was that in?
He was the Vanisher in Deadpool 2.
Oh, he was in Deadpool Part 2?
Yes, he was.
Because of that director. He was connected to the director. The director was the stunt guy. He also did Fall Guy.
Okay.
Yeah, cameos should be jokes. I think that, like, oh yeah, that's the equivalent here was the version of Wolverine played by The Witcher. What
Henry Cavill.
Henry Cavill, sir.
Yeah. Cavalrine.
How dare you not know that man's name? The greatest Superman we've ever had.
With another amazing joke that I can't believe it's possible to make in the business of Hollywood, where Deadpool says to him, "We'll treat you so much better than those guys down the street."
I cringed at that. I also cringed whenever Wesley Snipes said, There'll never be another Blade. I'm like, he might be right. They're having difficulties with that film.
No, he's paid his tax bill now. It's fine.
Yeah. Oh, man. Guys, you guys remember that?
I'm surprised they didn't have a joke about that.
He got into tax trouble? Oh, Jesus.
That's infamously why Blade Trinity exists, because Wesley Snipes had a tax bill he needed to pay, right?
Mm-hmm.
Indeed, he did. What makes this, for me, an effective movie is that someone like me who hasn't been watching these movies for the past 20 plus years, I don't have the depth of knowledge that you have, Lawrence, about all of these characters. And I was still able to enjoy it. And I was even able to, you know what I really enjoyed, because I went to go and see this at my West Philly theater, my favorite West Philly theater.
Shout out to Philly.
And which is always very vocal. I love this audience. And every time a new character, or I guess an old character, would pop up who was familiar to the fans in the audience, it was like a huge roar. I mean, it was really, really fun to hear the reaction from the audience.
Even in the UK, even in the cinema I went to in Leeds in West Yorkshire, where nobody ever says a word, there were whoops and cheers when the cameos came up, and there was lots of audible laughing all the way through. It was an absolute riot. Yeah,
it was fun to see this in a theater for sure.
It was a wonderful theater experience. Honestly, I feel sorry for people who are like going now, because they're not going to have that kind of charge, because people now know what to expect. That charge, like, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? Man, like, in between this and Spider-Man No Way Home, one of my favorite viewing experiences in the movie theater. Like, it was really, really fun.
I was thinking the same thing.
It was really fun to be in the movie theater for this film, which makes me wonder, will this film have legs moving forward? But to be honest, it might. I mean, because it's making a lot of money. So it very well may. But yeah, this was a wonderful film-going experience for me.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. You are probably pretty busy. I now have 5 podcasts, plus I teach a class and have a part-time day job. With everything going on, it's easy to let your priorities slip and not engage in proper self-care. You might want to consider, as part of your non-negotiable self-care regimen, therapy. Talking things through with a professional can help you cope with everything coming at you, keep you from getting in your own way, get you out of counterproductive cycles. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself. Therapy is not just for people who have experienced major trauma. It is a thing that we should be making time for in a civilized society. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. BetterHelp is entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire and you'll get matched with a licensed therapist. If you don't like your therapist, you could switch at any time for no additional charge. So never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/pretty today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/pretty. If you're a big fan of music and comedy like we are, then you need to check out this new podcast, Let Me Ask My Dad. Hosted by David Bryan, best known as the co-founder of Bon Jovi and as a Tony Award-winning composer behind Broadway smashes Memphis and Diana the Musical, alongside his comedian daughter Gabby Bryan. Let Me Ask My Dad is a cross-generation self-help podcast like none other. Each week, David and Gabby answer listener-submitted dilemmas on everything from how to handle disrespectful coworkers to what to do when you escape a cult, with amazing stories from the road and David's 40-year music career along the way. Maybe we should ask them whether it's ethical for us to try to get Sarah to watch horror movies, and correspondingly, how to get appropriate mental health services help to Lawrence when we make him see too much gross sex stuff. Go check them out. Catch new episodes of Let Me Ask My Dad every Tuesday, wherever you get your podcasts.
Is this making people excited about the next X-Men that's coming out?
Oh, absolutely.
It kind of shouldn't be, though. I think it's a really interesting question, the effect that this movie is going to have on superhero movies in general. Because Deadpool versus Wolverine is so good because it's making fun of how bad superhero movies are currently. Mm-hmm. And firstly, that's not an especially good reason to make you excited about more superhero movies, apart from the fact that it maybe means that the studios are at least alive to what's wrong with the superhero movies they're currently making. But it doesn't really give you a template for how to make better superhero movies. I would be worried if studios took a lesson from this movie that, we need to make more superhero movies that are irreverent and making fun of how bad superhero movies are. Because eventually you've got to make another good one on purpose.
But isn't this just kind of going full circle. Like I think of like the old Batman TV show, you know, where it was so campy. And are we going from, you know, Christopher Nolan serious to more irreverent? I mean, I just finished season 3 of The Boys. That show does not take itself seriously at all. And it can be quite funny. It's also really violent, but it can be really funny. I watched the first part of The Peacemaker, Mark, that you recommended. Maybe we're just cycling back over to more camp, more humor with our superheroes.
I would be into that. I hope so, but I'm not sure.
I mean, it seems a strategy in Marvel has, and DC really, has just been to throw a lot of different tones and audiences at the wall and see what works. And I actually liked the New Mutants movie that was, I
did too. I love that one. Yeah.
I didn't see it.
This is an X-Men spin-off thing, but it was another one of these weird things where they can't like actually talk about the X-Men. They can't have them be at the Institute. They can't use the characters from the regular X-Men movies, but it was like Anna Taylor-Joy and a bunch of other recognizable folks.
Why not? Is it Marvel? Is it still Marvel?
Yes, it is.
I mean, Marvel licensed it, but there's a lot of weird stuff with all these things. It's the same with Legion, which was another, it's like Professor X's son. And this was a great TV show, but it just like had to be self-contained. And maybe they could sort of refer slyly to Professor X, but they couldn't have any crossover of any sort. And both of those shows took themselves seriously as trippy adventure shows. Legion more so than New Mutants, but New Mutants was like a horror film basically, because
it's exactly what it was.
One of the characters' powers is to like summon up your nightmares in physical form. So like they just played with that. And so it was sort of this like one character discovering her power, which is, I think, like what made the original X-Men film so good is because it was actually just about Rogue really, and about like that she touches people and they die. And that's a pretty, you know, you could make a lot of dramatic hay out of that. So it was like her as the sort of Alice character being introduced to the wonderland of the various X-Men who were not as well characterized.
Apart from Wolverine, who's kind of in the second head in that movie.
Yeah, he is.
But you're right. What made that film really good was they found a really neat kind of core theme that they could latch on to. It also seemed like I rewatched some of the older X-Men movies too, and it really seemed like that first one understood the heart of what the X-Men were about. That like they were an allegory for civil inequality, and they really, really clung onto that and ran with it. And the core storytelling device of having Rogue and Wolverine, who are both people who for different reasons can't play well with others, and ran through with that as a storytelling device too. And I think it really drives home the fact that in order to make good superhero movies, you do really just have to get back to basics. And like to make the next good superhero movie, I think it's going to be when someone finds a new core theme in a character that they can just run with, and a new way to get depth of storytelling out of these old characters.
The wonderful thing about Marvel is that you can have a number of different kinds of stories told within the same universe. So you have Blade, you have the New Mutants, and that's your horror kind of arm. Then you have Deadpool, which is your irreverent arm. And you have the X-Men, which is kind of your serious-ish arm, because they're dealing with serious things. And this can all be under the same umbrella. So to your point, Sarah, yes, I think we will see more films, TV shows like this that are irreverent and that are self-referential and they're kind of winking at the camera. But they also had, and this is where they've fallen down, they have to also make sure they do a good job with the serious films. And their first crack at that, I think is the first one, will be the Fantastic Four. They have got to nail that. Like, and Dr. Doom being RDJ, we haven't even talked about that, being Robert Downey Jr., that's great. Dr. Doom is probably my favorite villain in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I love that guy. But RDJ being that character will not matter if they don't knock, Fantastic Four out the park. And I suspect, knowing the history of the Fantastic Four, is that Doom would be kind of a side character in that film. He'd be in the background, and maybe in the post-credit scene, they'll tease he's going to be more important in the Avengers, Doomsday. But the point here is that they've shown that they can do a really good job of these funny, slick, irreverent films, self-referential cameos, whatever. That's good. But Deadpool's always been good at that. Can they now, because he's right, the MCU's at a low point, can they now get out of the shadow of these half-hearted television shows that were not good all around. I can't think of a single television show that I was like, you guys remember Moon Knight? Y'all remember that? Will we ever see that guy again?
I was just about to bring up Moon Knight because that's an interesting thing about like the different tones and the different kinds of shows and movies that they keep making. And the answer can't just be that they need to investigate different kinds of tones because they've done the super serious thing and they've done the irreverent thing.
Absolutely right.
The tone isn't
just be good. Yeah.
It doesn't seem to be the thing that's missing. There's some kind of quality. Maybe it's also like the saturation. So it's very difficult to get people excited about a new superhero when we have so many. I guess the challenge is like, why should we care about this one? And it's a difficult question to answer.
It is. And it kind of goes back to what you were saying, Lawrence, like, is it good? And does it need to be good? I think I might be changing my mind. I think it does need to be good.
On some level, yes.
If they're going to be able to have the ability to breathe new life into this universe. Like, I don't know what they can do with Deadpool that hasn't been done already. And do we really want to see that guy again? And I mean that seriously, as somebody who really enjoyed all three movies. Are we going to be very tired of him if they bring him back out again for a fourth film, like in 2 years? Are we going to be like, oh no, that was nice. But we've had enough of you. There wasn't really any place for him to go. But I think we have had enough of him. I mean, I think I might have had enough of him.
There needs to be a real reason to make a Deadpool movie. The first one was perfect because it was at the height of Marvel's power and he was there to prick their pomposity.
Totally.
And then the second one was fine. And I think there's a real lesson there in how you should treat Deadpool and properties like it. Because the second one was fine, made a lot of jokes, decent movie. There wasn't a particular cultural need for a Deadpool movie there. It was just there because the second one had been successful.
I protest, sir. I protest. I enjoyed the second.
Fair. I think there's probably much to disagree with. But then the third one is a runaway success, again, because it's here at the right cultural moment, because everyone's sick of superheroes, because there's Marvel fatigue and all the rest of it. So it can then make jokes about that. You need the Deadpool movie or the Deadpool similar movie needs to happen at the right cultural moment for it. And that is definitely not going to be in the next few years because things aren't going to change significantly in the next few years.
So I know they crap on it directly in this movie, but the whole using the multiverse as an in-story device to, over a period of years now, gradually bring first Spider-Man and these properties that they had leased out to other filmmakers, other studios, into things like, I still don't know how they're going to stick the landing. You know, I'll be really interested with that X-Men film. I think that's a lot of, is like, because there's already been X-Men film, you know, and they can't do it like they did, you know, I think they did it pretty masterfully with the young Spider-Man. Whatever you think of when they actually brought in the Spider-Man, you know, in a multiverse thing, the Doctor Strange movie was kind of forgettable. But I've enjoyed, in terms of the TV shows, at least the first season of Loki, you know, one of the main storytelling techniques that they used in this film, the time variance, I really enjoyed that. And I thought that it had a purpose because, it was a very limited length series and it had a definite focus, and this is what we're doing. It's invariably going to be unwieldy. There's just, several different movies and shows that are getting at this, but I'm just sort of in awe, as if somebody had created the biggest skyscraper. Just the majesty of making these many multi-million-dollar films in the first place is actually doing a narrative construction that's this long-term an edifice. I'm kind of in awe of it, even if it doesn't work. We'll see if it sticks landing.
I'm more of a DC Comics fan than a Marvel Comics fan, and DC are kind of patient zero for constructing increasingly elaborate multiverse-based stories. The reason that came about in the first place is really instructive, I think, because it started from different writers and different versions of comics telling stories about the same superheroes, decided that they needed a way to make this all narratively consistent. And so they decided that this version of Superman, who was like married to Lois Lane, and Lois Lane like knew who he was and had these adventures, was Earth 1 Superman. And any Superman that had a different kind of adventure, which was incompatible with that, will say that really happened, but it just really happened in a different universe. And then before too long, DC decided that, okay, we need to make stories about what happens when we take this idea seriously. And we have Superman from this Earth meeting Superman in this Earth. And then they have a bunch of fun with that and they tell a lot of complicated stories. And then eventually it gets too overwhelming and we have to have a special storyline where we collapse all the universes back in on themselves so that we can start just telling basic superhero stories again. And that's a kind of point that I feel like the Marvel Universe needs to get to, kind of where the DC Comics got to, I think 10 or 15 years ago now after the Flashpoint paradox. And they just had kind of a reset and started telling character-driven stories again, as opposed to stories that were driven by the eccentricities of telling superhero stories in the first place, or like the weird continuity. Stories driven by character rather than stories driven by continuity, I think it provides a much more firm kind of narrative basis for telling interesting stories. Basically, you run out of steam very quickly if you're trying to tell stories just by exploiting weird loopholes in stories that you've already told. At some point, you have to get back to just telling the original stories again.
Well, the animated Spider-Man, I think, has done a really good job of really getting back down to character basics, where that's definitely a character that I am interested in.
You're talking about Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, right?
Yeah, the two animated. I'm so excited for the third one to come out, but that is absolutely a character study. And it started really small. He's not saving the world yet. He is fighting a bad guy, one bad guy in New York City. And it's also becomes more about not just him, but his relationships with his family, his relationships with his tight circle of friends. That's always really interesting to see when it's somebody who is harboring this secret.
They use the multiverse trope in the Spider-Verse movies really, really well because it's directly tied into one of the core themes of those movies, which is, hey, anyone can be Spider-Man. I'm the new Spider-Man. There's a lot of cool stuff that they do around that. It's very weird how many movies and TV shows have really heavily lent on the multiverse thing recently. It's done very well in the Spider-Verse movies, but maybe it's too much elsewhere.
The Marvel comics have done that hard reset, and that happened with the Secret Wars with Jonathan Hickman in the 2015s, I believe that was. And what the upcoming films promise to do is to do that. Is to do that hard reset and allow different kind of stories to come through. And kind of get away from being tied to continuity. And honestly, this is a whole separate conversation. It makes me wonder if that's going to be like the last hurrah of Kevin Federline. What's his name? Kevin? What's his name?
Feige?
Federline. I'm thinking about Britney Spears.
Britney Spears.
I'm sorry. Feige. It makes me wonder. I don't know why that came to mind anyway, but it makes me wonder if he's going to step away after that, because that would be a good point for him to step away from it. After that Secret Wars film, really, this whole experiment with dimensions has not been successful. It just really hasn't. Doctor Strange wasn't very good. What Spider-Man, that's a whole different kind of storytelling. It's not even part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Not really. What's the TVA doing in Deadpool versus and Wolverine? I don't know. Like it's so convoluted, so complicated. And then of course Jonathan Majors came along and messed up whatever plans they did have. Because if you remember, it was supposed to be the Kang Dynasty Avengers films. Like, so things are so messed up now. I think they're going to have to do that hard reset. They're going to do that with the Doom film. They're going to do that with Secret Wars. And once we get on the other side of that, that would be a good off-ramp for Kevin Federline or Kevin Feige or whichever Kevin this is.
Just recast Jonathan Majors. Come on.
I know.
That would have been the smart thing. It's not like Marvel hasn't recast actors before. You guys remember when it was Terrence Howard, I believe it was, and then they recast it with Don Cheadle? Like,
sure,
they can recast. Yeah. It's not that hard.
Definitely. Yeah, they do that all the time. So I'm going to show my ignorance here. Where does Captain America fit in all of this? Because he was in the earlier movies, and now we've got a new Captain America. Speaking of recasting, how does he fit in?
It's not a recast. It's a different character.
It's a different character? Oh, okay.
So it's Falcon, so that they had Falcon in the Winter Soldier TV show.
Yeah, and so Captain Falcon takes over. Yeah.
So it's been a whole thing in the comics that, and then eventually the old Captain came back, and now they're both Captain America. I don't know what the current status is, but yes, folks can see our Captain America episode where we talked about a lot about race stuff and talk about the serious end, right? We got to deal with racism and what does America mean, and being the exact polar opposite of Deadpool, which is, to bring that back, perhaps the best switcheroo in terms of the cameos here, of having what is his name? Who plays Captain America?
Chris Evans.
Chris Evans. Yeah.
Back as
He was great.
as a different character.
Is he skinny? Is he really skinny now? Is that because he looked really slim? Did no one else catch that? Oh no, he looked really slim.
The one thing we know about Chris Evans is that he can do both. His torso can do whatever he wants.
That is true. But I will say that the new Captain America film, it looks very Winter-esque. Like it looks like they're trying to do that 70s spy paranoia film within the Marvel universe, which is exactly what the Winter Soldier film was. If they do that successfully, I'll be very happy. Like Marvel has a lot of potential. Like the Fantastic Four film looks like it's going to be good. I hope they knock it out the park. The Captain America films look like it can be good. They're also going to bring forward one of my favorite characters, Isaiah Bradley. I'm looking forward to that. I'm really looking forward to these films, but they have to be able, because this is a wonderful film. They made a lot of money with this film, but they cannot rest their laurels with this film, right? This is just one film in the universe. This film did well. Congratulations. You did a good job. You made a lot of money with the R-rated film. That's great. But now they have to do the serious films now, and they have to do it well. If they do those serious films well, I'm back in. Because I've been out on Marvel for a little bit. I haven't even watched the Thor Love and Thunder movie. I didn't watch it. I need them to get back to doing these films well. If they do that, I'll be in.
Are superhero films like pizza, where, bad pizza's still okay.
Yeah.
But you don't want to, have Domino's too much or whatever.
You'll mess up your stomach. You're right. You're absolutely right.
Because I liked both Fantastic Four movies. I actually saw the 2015 one within the last couple of years, and I thought they were fine.
I enjoyed them too. I thought they were good. Yeah.
But we had talked before about the Brie Larson movie that came out last year.
Marvels, the Marvel.
The Marvels.
It is completely left their mind. You don't even know what the name of that movie is anymore.
No, I know.
Completely left their mind.
No, it's true. But I still felt like I had a good time at that movie. It wasn't the top tier, and I think we had talked about that. We have top tier Marvel movies, and then movies that they don't always have to hit it out of the park like that. You can have these middling Marvel movies and be just fine and still be entertaining and relatively good. It's just when you're way down here, give us too much of that. Or if you're only serving the fans only. And I felt like Deadpool did serve the fans, but even somebody like me could come in and enjoy it too.
Was there something specific about, I talked about the fourth wall breaking, self-reflective aspect, that doing that in a superhero thing, that my impression originally was that this is actually Deadpool's superpower, is that he can turn, and which I don't think they do in the movies, that they don't make a thing about this, that he can, he's actually has like multiple personality disorder. Like that's why he has these different dialogue bubbles that are in different colors. And part of it is that he can, so it's like Gollum. It's that he is talking meta. He's talking to you. He's talking to some version of himself. I don't remember the details. It's been a while since I read any of the Deadpool comics, and maybe this has evolved over time. But like, I also remember this in Dark Tower, eventually Stephen King's thing. Like they eventually had the characters in the book track down Stephen King, the person, and make him finish the goddamn books. Like that was part of the story. Like that's how fourth wall breaking they got, because there was a long break between when he, and then because he got hit by a car and he was like, shit, I could die anytime. I better finish this stuff right now or people will be very mad at me. And so that was like,
we'll have to get Brandon Sanderson to do it.
Exactly. But just the idea that, if you're going to be self-referential, actually making that part of the magic of the character. Maybe that's a one-time shtick or two-time shtick, but
I've never read any of the Deadpool comics, but I am beyond certain that there are series of Deadpool comics where they say literally his power is to literally break the fourth wall and all that, and metaphysically we just have to deal with that somehow. I'm also sure that there are comics where they're very clear about the fact that the way he breaks the fourth wall is just artifice and his powers are just those stated firmly in the code. He's got regeneration or whatever. And I think that latter option is the correct one. And I think if you try and make it the case that in universe, Deadpool is breaking the fourth wall. You're making a huge, difficult job for yourself that you just don't need to make. Like, I've not been a professional philosopher for a number of years, but if you try and argue metaphysically that this is all fictionally true in the world of Deadpool, I will fight you.
Also, remember in Monty Python Holy Grail when like that monster is chasing them and the animator has a heart attack and that's how the monster is destroyed.
Yeah, exactly. And the way
shtick
to interpret that is as a joke, not as something that is literally happening in the world of the movie.
Anything else? I mean, this was the wrap up. I mean, were you touched? Insofar, I know Sarah doesn't maybe have this connection all the way back, but you must have seen some of these X-Men movies and Fantastic Four movies at the time, even if you weren't trying to, study for a podcast, but just having it be like, this is the wrap party for that whole series of things. Like, I bet you forgot that some of these movies even were made. I honestly did not remember that there was a separate Elektra movie. I thought maybe she was just in Daredevil, but now that actually I saw that. But yeah,
you saw it opening day, Mark. You saw it opening day.
But I have, really, I was pretty invested in the whole X-Men thing through its first class, second generation rebirth and blah, 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 trying to do the same Dark Phoenix saga twice in not really getting it either time.
One of the things I think the movie did extremely well was to properly eulogize the amount of work that goes into things in Hollywood that just never come to fruition.
Yes.
Good point.
It felt like a really personal thing. I mean, who can imagine why? Because obviously Ryan Reynolds has never famously struggled for years to make movies that end up being, disappointing or just not happening, or sometimes change the face of cinema so that, some things work and some things don't. But it felt like it was a very deliberate homage to how invested like these actors and the crews and the people who were trying to get these things off the ground became, and the reality that like all of these things get left by the wayside. And I thought that was very sweet. It was kind of touching.
It is crazy that like now it's become okay for studios to not release a finished movie, like what they did with Supergirl. Batgirl. Thank you.
It'll come out sometime. I have faith that all things will eventually surface.
We will never see that film. Never see it.
But it is, you do see the work just the amount of Deadpool costumes that they had to create for that last fight scene. I'm sure a lot of that was CGI too, but it was pretty cool to see all those different Deadpools.
Yeah, if they got all those often famous actors on set together, I would be very surprised. But maybe they just wanted to be in the movie a little bit.
I think so. So is Gambit is that a real superhero?
He was one of my favorites in the cartoons.
Yes, he's part of the X-Men. Yes, he's a real.
So you're displaying we didn't tell you to watch X-Men Origins Wolverine.
I did not.
Which I was still waiting for, because they introduced Ryan Reynolds as Wade Wilson, who then becomes, in Deadpool 2, you saw the post-credit scene or whatever where he's time traveling and he shoots the Merc Without a Mouth version of himself. That was from Wolverine Origins. Anyway, Wolverine Origins was I feel like that was most aimed at me. I got giddy at all the characters that were being introduced in that and having the Blob and stuff in there, but doing it kind of straight. I don't know. That was a better, in some ways. But I didn't rewatch it, so I don't know.
But that movie was so terrible. It was so bad.
Really?
It was so bad. Oh my gosh.
I haven't rewatched it to see, but I really, really enjoyed that one at the time.
You will cringe so bad. Listen, I think that Al is onto something because, look, we think back to the Daredevil movie with Ben Affleck. Oh, the movie was so terrible. The Elektra movie. Oh, that movie was so terrible. We think back to Blade 1 and 2 was good. Blade Trinity, that movie was so terrible. But people worked really, really hard on those films, right? They worked hard, create the costumes, the actors got in shape. They worked really, really hard. By the way, Ryan Reynolds is in Deadpool Trinity, the worst part of that film. Anyway, and so this film is very loving in saying we saw that work, right? We saw that. We appreciate that. We're going to give you a proper send-off. We're not just going to kind of discard you. We'll give you a proper send-off in this film. And so I think Al is right that this film, and Ryan Reynolds knows how that stuff, it sometimes hits, sometimes it doesn't. Most oftentimes it doesn't, honestly. What the MCU did is really, really kind of special because there was a crap load of superhero films that tried and missed. And so this film is a love work and say, hey, you know, we appreciate that. That's the reason why the film cameos are not really cameos. They're genuine kind of integrated parts of the film. So, yeah, I think it is. But also it is time for us to move past those kinds of films. You know, back in the 2000s, I would never have imagined a film like this would exist. It was unthinkable for a film this high quality to exist. So this was a loving send-off, but they've got to do right moving forward. They've paid homage to the past. They've got to do well moving forward if they want this to kind of rebuild itself back up.
Have another crack at Green Lantern, Ryan, if you're listening. You can do it. I know you can do it this time.
Man, let Green Lantern go. Let it go.
I will not.
That movie was so incredibly bad that he needs to let that go.
They should give Channing Tatum a whole movie to be that guy.
The Gambit movie? No, don't do that. Did you hear that accent? No, I don't want to hear that.
I could see Channing as Green Lantern, though.
Gambit was in Wolverine Origins, but it was Taylor Kitsch from Friday Night Lights.
Oh.
But I didn't remember that clearly enough. I thought maybe it was Channing Tatum in that, or I just didn't remember.
No, it wasn't. It was.
You know, what Channing Tatum's connection was this. I'm sure that's not the accent he would have done if he had actually gotten to do the movie that he was contracted to do at some point that was canceled.
I think he wanted to be Gambit in that film. I think that's what happened. Like he wanted to be Gambit and it didn't work out. Yeah, something like that happened. Like, I can't remember the details of it.
He did look like he was having a good time.
Oh, he was having a blast. He was having fun.
There were lots of moments in Deadpool versus Wolverine when I thought, if I read more of the entertainment trade papers, I would probably understand these jokes.
A lot of them.
More than I do. I feel like you need an exhaustive record of the number of cancelled Marvel comic projects in order to properly understand everything that was referenced.
I think, Lawrence, you are the perfect audience for this movie because you do understand all of the industry stuff. You've been watching these movies since the late 90s. I mean, I think you probably got every joke. A lot of it went way over my head, but you probably got just about every joke.
I don't know if I forgot every joke, but I got a lot of those jokes. I mean, they were coming so fast that it was hard to kind of catch up on all of them. Honestly, it might be Mark that is the real target audience for this film because Mark knows the comics. Mark knows the history. Mark's been around for a while. I mean, he's a man that's long in the tooth when it comes to this Marvel stuff. Like he knows that. He knows this world.
Careful.
Been around so long that I don't remember that I've seen some of these films or what the status of some of these. I don't remember a goddamn thing about any of the Blade films. I probably saw all three of them. Maybe I just saw the first two. Oh my gosh,
you got to go back and watch them again. They're so good.
Okay, maybe we can have a Blade episode in the future at some point, or we still have not had a vampires episode. Well, so before we say goodbye in the main thing, we don't want to see more Deadpool. And I guess we sort of already weighed in on sort of what directions we want this to take.
Yeah, I think I'm done with Deadpool.
Is there anything else in terms of follow-up or the future that we have not already covered related to this film?
What this shows is that Ryan Reynolds is a really terrific producer and he should be allowed to do almost whatever he wants.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a big swing there, Al.
It's a ringing endorsement.
I think Ryan Reynolds knew that this movie needed to be made, and I don't think anybody else would have known that exactly this movie needed to be made, or the first Deadpool movie.
I'm going to go on record. I eventually, even though Marvel and DC are separate worlds and they're competing, but there have been crossovers. And it just got to happen sometime.
No,
maybe
Mark,
the DC needs to get more reestablished or something. But like, I'm just saying that'll be a thing eventually, and it'll be a big thing when it's a thing, and it might stink. Not that to make it one whole universe, but you've created in both of them the multiverse thing. So, you know, you have to therefore have the ability for at least Spider-Man to show up in a Green Lantern film or whatever.
Well, I was going to say, they need to make it the lowest stakes characters possible. So it's like Booster Gold teaming up with
Booster Gold
with Gambit.
Hey, Gambit's not low stakes. Hey,
Nightcrawler then. Booster Gold and Nightcrawler do a team.
No, how dare you disrespect Nightcrawler? No, sir.
Nightcrawler was my actual favorite X-Man, and I was just heartbroken. Never got a role.
So 2 other things from my X-Men reading experience. There was a comic called Exiles that was after establishing the multiverse thing. It was a bunch of characters that were from various universes, and some of them were like, you know, it's the female Captain America or whatever. traveling from universe to universe. Like, oh, this is the universe where Captain America with Abraham Lincoln and whatever. And so that would be a fine TV show. Maybe, if you could get a bunch of cameos in different episodes, or maybe you don't have to use cameos because they're alternate. It's really, really leaning into this. And the other one, probably my favorite Marvel comic, is called Ecstatics. It was what X-Force went into. And they actually, in Deadpool 2, one of the characters, I think the anarchist, the guy that could barf acid, that's one of the original Ecstatics members. And the thing with Ecstatics is that they would go on missions and get killed like crazy and just keep, but it's all about how they're media celebrities, like, and just selling their images this way and that way. So it seems like I'm surprised that this show has not already been made. Maybe The Boys is sort of
that sounds
the
kind of
equivalent.
like The Boys.
Yes.
Yeah.
So maybe we don't need that, but it's a different take on it. The anarchist's replacement was a guy called Mr. Sensitive. His power was that he just had very sensitive senses and skin. So Professor X had to make him a costume so he could bear just walking around in normal settings.
Wow.
Perhaps this is after talk.
Yeah. I mean, let me answer your question though. One thing I do want to see, and I mean this, I want to see Cassandra Nova again. I think she's a wonderful character.
Sure.
I love the way that she was realized in this film. Everybody else, I could do without. Pyro, maybe. It was good to see Pyro again. Everyone else, expendable to me.
Any other last words?
Do we actually want to see a 90-year-old Hugh Jackman playing Wolverine?
No, we do not.
No.
He needs to go. And I think he was saying in this film, in that last scene, he's done. Like he's done for real. In Logan, he had a great send-off. That was a wonderful film. Great film. The reason why he did this, I guess, this is a different Logan, not that Logan. So, yeah, he came back. But if I see him again, I will be unhappy. He needs to go off and do musicals. He's a great singer. Go do that.
Go do other things.
Stop eating too much protein. Stop going to the gym. Go live your life and sing songs. Go.
All right. If you want to hear us interrogate Sarah about her first experience of the Logan movie, you have to listen to the After Talk. Patreon.com/prettymuchpop. Thanks to all the current supporters. Thanks to everybody for listening. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
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 Pretty Much Pop is part of the Partially Examined Life podcast network. Get more Pretty Much Pop at prettymuchpop.com. Get bonus content for every episode at patreon.com/prettymuchpop.